Welcome back to our election studio where Nigeria decides, and thank you very much for staying with us. Now, if you're just joining us, today's topic is going to be looking at the information and communication technology sector. It has become one of the most vibrant industries in the country, and the reason is not far-fetched. According to statistics, a global statistics company, that's Statistica, there are approximately 76.2 million Nigerians internet users, that is, as of 2017, an increase of nearly 50% from the 2013 figure of 51.8 million.
The question is, how viable is the ITC space in Nigeria? Lots of issues coming up. We have two guests to talk to us. They're experts in the technology business. I have Isaiah Etuk. He's an IT manager with TWPC. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Ido Akinde, tech lead, Sev Consult Limited. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, Isaiah, we're talking about a space where you're very much familiar with, but I'd like us to look at one of the claims by the Minister of Communications, that's Adebayo Shito, and it says, well, the information and communications technology industry is actually attracted much more foreign direct investment to the tune of about $32 billion, and that's away from $40 billion as at last year. Now, let's talk through potentials of the ICT space in Nigeria. Looking at foreign direct investment first, what should we be looking at?
Okay. So just off the top of my head, without any scientific data to back it, I'd say that we're sitting on a gold mine, okay? And what we've recorded so far, what we've seen so far in terms of foreign direct investment over the years is a tip of the iceberg. I think that at the risk of comparing apples to apples, okay, India last year did a total, in 2018, did a total of $150 billion in IT outsourcing. If you ask any Nigerian IT professional who has worked side by side with Indians in Nigeria, they will tell you that there's no extra brain matter in those guys' skulls. My point is, if we have the right enabling environment and factors that can stimulate growth in this sector, we can recreate and possibly do better than that.
Do you think that the government is making efforts, and individuals, Nigerians generally, are they making efforts to create the right space that you mentioned?
Okay, so the efforts by especially the government so far are to be commended. There's been a few sound bites from the government that obviously are attracting this FDI and so on and so forth.
Now, what kind of sound bites are you talking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, things like the passing of a cybersecurity bill. So there's a stance, there's a position of the government against cybersecurity, an official position. And things like that get to give confidence and strength to the sector. Okay? However, there's much more that can be done. And I could go off on a tangent, but we'll come back to that.
Isaiah, now talking about much more that can be done. We looked just about 22 hours ago, New York actually beat Silicon Valley as the biggest tech city. Now we have the likes of our computer village in Lagos State. What do you think we should be doing now to tap those areas when we are looking at potentials?
Okay, for me, basically, I won't look at the government aspect. The government has done a lot, but let's leave government for now. Technology drives itself, you know. So if you're in technology and you know what to do, I don't think, like you said something about regulations, but regulations don't get to the end user. Now, imagine I'm a developer, per se, and I build websites. Now, there are no regulation that stops me from making so much money. And now I have a company, I pay tax, okay, I'm putting back. Now, there's a lot of, there are organizations that don't have like websites, corporate, looking at the corporate space as well, there are a lot of organizations that want to now use technology to drive what they do. People like that, and then there are people that have this knowledge that can, Nigerians basically, that can do these implementations to handle integrations for them. Okay, now technology is a driver, not necessarily when it comes to when you have to do with frameworks, like he has said. I think the drive itself.
Okay, let me ask this question. Internet. Let me ask like a very, very layman. Internet is a key driver of technology,
Yep.
right? And there is this in 2017. I don't know if there's a latest statistics, but the most recent I could find was that by carried out by the Internet World Stats shows that the internet penetration in Africa is at 31%, lower than any other in any other country, in any other continent. Is that true? And should we worry about this if we're talking about the potentials that we can gain from?
Okay. Let me not necessarily, because now when about 10 years ago when internet started, the penetration was faster. Now in Nigeria, people start adopting a lot. Okay, let me go to GSM. You know, when at the advent of GSM, we embraced it. A lot of people started getting phones, and it was, imagine MTN. I don't know if I'm supposed to, if I can mention.
No mention of names, but telecommunication giants.
Giants, came in. You imagine the returns they made in less than like about a year. You know, people drive technology. You know, we embraced it. Even sometimes we didn't even understand. I knew when I bought a phone. I bought a line for about 15,000 naira. 15,000.
Roger that. There are some people that bought for 30 something.
And you know, some people bought for 30 something. Sometimes there's a bug of buy one, get one free. People were buying two phones. You know, the penetration was amazing. But after a while, you notice a lot of people started using this phone. So I think in the last 2 years, it looked like it has dropped because we have a lot more people using technology.
Yeah, I think you didn't quite get the question I was asking. Okay. Internet access, yes. We're saying it's at 31%, lowest among many continents. Should we worry about this? You've just talked about the huge potential that's available, people buying smartphones and all of that. Should we worry that we're just, let me take that question to you, though. Should we worry that we're just at 31%? That is, if we're agreeing with the stats provided by the Internet World Stats.
Okay. Caveat, if we agree with the stats. I think that though that statistic looks like a high-level aggregate, which, when you drill down into the regions and/or countries in Africa, you may find different realities. So 31% for the whole of Africa, 50 countries, 1 billion people, may look not unimpressive. But I'm not very sure, but I don't think that Nigeria's internet penetration rate right now is less than 70%. I don't think so. Okay, so just for the purpose of discussion, if you then think of that, you then see that the realities across different regions and/or countries in Africa has to be different in terms of how you apply or how you leverage this internet access to better people's everyday lives. Having said that, let's take the barest minimum as let's say that the 31% is actually the case everywhere. You would then cast your mind back to runaway successes like the USSD financial inclusion use cases that we've had recently. And you see how people have been able to, that's in Nigeria. You think about the M-Pesa, the mobile banking, excellent runaway success in Kenya, you know, and you see how Africans have been innovative and creative enough to kind of sidestep the huge technology infrastructure deficit that they have and deliver value to people who don't even have internet access. That doesn't excuse that the governments and those responsible should provide the basic internet access, but people, like he said, people drive technology. People are finding creative ways to deliver services to people, even in places where internet is poor. Yeah.
And now moving on, we have a number of active telecom subscribers reaching as much as 148.7 million as at August 2015, and that also rose again to 162.05 million as at September last year. So that was the third quarter report. Now, if we are having the Internet of Things bringing life on an easy basis, how much are we supposed to be into this, and can you just break it down? Because when we say Internet of Things or automation, we necessarily don't really understand beyond just seeing our lifts and pressing our phones and saying we can perform certain activities. So the potentials here, open our eyes. Yes, you.
Okay, so there are a lot of exciting emerging technologies these days, and you've mentioned one of them. Very, very, I mean, it evokes great emotions whenever it's mentioned. Internet of Things. Essentially, Internet of Things is the coordinated connection of various things. So from a fitness tracker on someone's wrist to a sensor or a set of sensors in their car to a weather sensor somewhere close to their office, so that
their microwave.
to their microwave and their fridge, monitoring maybe a milk level or something in a bottle. So what providers are trying to do now is to study the average consumer's everyday path through their life as they wake up in the morning, pass through their bathroom, pass through their kitchen, to their car, to their office, and come back. And they want to have a touch point in each of those areas and send back data to a master server somewhere through which they can then coordinate and say, okay, this guy spends 24 hours in the pub every day, or this guy spends 3 hours in traffic every day. Can I send him something to engage him and make the traffic less strenuous, and so on and so forth. So that's the ultimate big picture value of IoT. IoT is extremely applicable to things like agriculture. Imagine that for far-off places where in the north, for instance, where there's been desert encroachment. Say, for example, there's some island there where that is good for planting some crop. If you don't have these sensors, you can't know that it's good, or you can't know that it will be good in 6 months, and so on and so on, or what type of crop that particular soil is good for. So all of that, aggregating all of that all over Africa, it's exciting. It's exciting. There's so many applications for that.
Isaiah, you also work within the recruitment and outsourcing area. Now, which areas of specialization should we be looking at our areas of potential? Because at the end of the day, we have those who are website developers, we have those who are, it's just a long value chain, analysts, data analysts, and a whole lot more. So which areas of specialization should we be focusing on, especially like we initially talked about, the Internet of Things as well, because when you're looking at the integration of this whole chain of activities, we need manpower to fuel it away from I'll still come back to the 3G and 4G internet access as well.
For me, everything works. Okay, now, talking about manpower, we have developers. They listen to you, solve your problem by developing a system that solves your problem. That's for developers. Now, for data analysis, data is almost everything now. Like what is said about Internet of Things, it can't function without data. Monitoring what you do, how you cough, how you even sneeze, how you walk makes sense. Now, the way you even cough makes sense. The sound you produce, now they collate all that to actually make meaning out of the data, and now develop something to assist your work. So for me, data analysis is one core area. I think in Nigeria, Ndela is doing a lot. We have a lot of developers. We are even exporting human capital. It is one core part of what we do now in Nigeria, as in it's very important, and a lot of human capital development organizations are springing up now. We're selling them.
But I'd like you to really explain where we are looking at areas of specialization now, because I know Andela does a whole lot more, NIT does a whole lot of training as well, but in areas of recruitment and outsourcing, where has been the trend that you've observed as an expert in that field?
Web development, data analysis, and core software development in area of JavaScript, basically, which is a major trend now, and normal PHP core developers basically start.
Do you think we're going to have an explosion in that number?
We even have it already.
Okay,
we have it already.
I would like, I'm sure some person might be wondering, is this an election studio or an ICT studio? But no knowledge is lost, and we're still, seeing how The conversation continues. It's an extended version. I urge you to stick around and watch. I have a question. There seems to be some drawback, yeah, but we have a number of startups that seem to be doing extremely well. Tech start in the cyberspace, we have people like Jumia, we have Konga, Gigi, and the likes. Do you think they are going to grow, or there is a lifespan for that after a while to expire, to grow, maybe to be like stuff like Alibaba that we have, you know, and others? There is that worry that the drought in infrastructure might somehow eventually affect these tech startups.
Okay, so that's a very insightful question, and I'd say for these startups, they deserve, first of all, commendation for the audacity to want to operate in these climes, okay, despite the conditions. Having said that, I think that audacity and tenacity, if applied, will take them through the rough terrain. I think that the demand, the potential appetite in Africa, latent appetite for consumption of digital electronic technology services by the average African consumer is so huge that if we as indigents fail to capture it, people will come from outside, from other continents, and come and capture this value. So I mean, if there's any of these startups that's facing tough times, I'd urge them to keep at it. Also, this is probably the best time, you know, to run a startup or a tech startup, because right now, if you can build a solid, watertight business model around your product, funding is almost guaranteed nowadays.
But gentlemen, now, what policies should we also be looking into to have a stronger tap into the IT space and then make the digital economy thrive? Because at the end of the day, we know that this is an untapped space. So what policies do you think we should put in place now to ensure that we are maximizing the gains that we can actually have here in Nigeria?
Okay. All right. Two come to mind very, very, very readily. One is setting computer science and its related courses and subjects as a special priority subject in our education curriculum. It has been said many times in many places that the equivalent of basic literacy today, the ability to read and write, okay, will be the ability to write code in the future. So the kids of today who are in nursery and primary school, by the time they are adults, if you don't know how to code, it will be like someone today who doesn't know how to read and write. That's how integral coding or programming, software development is going to be woven into our lives. Therefore, if the rest of the world has started to move in that trend, we can't afford to have Nigerian kids today in 2019 by 2059 not be relevant in that age. So I very much advocate and strongly, you know, suggest that that should be set as a special subject. The second thing I always say is that please, please, please give tech startups some kind of tax incentive. It's extremely difficult to realize the kinds of commercial value that the equivalents of our tech startups over here experience in other continents. So the least that the government could do is to at least recognize that and give them some.
But how do you think this would also interfere in the area of robotics as well? Because there was a time I was opportune to attend a conference and I saw young minds, literally teenagers, boys and girls who had to put up robots up together, but most of those items were imported as well. So do you think that waivers too should get to the imports of all of those materials?
Oh yes, I do. Now imagine that what you saw, you sound impressed. Imagine that what you saw was the effort of those kids and their mentors, you know, the adults that would have encouraged them, despite the circumstances, and you were impressed. Imagine that there were policies, like you said, customs and import waivers, setting of STEM subjects, technology, robotics, engineering, and math subjects as special status subjects, and also letting aspiring tech founders know that if I go into this space, at least for the first, say, 18, 24 months, I will be exempt from paying, you know, so you can focus on creating value and not be bothered with the huge, you know, overheads of running the business, you know, as much as you have to. I'm not saying that people should be given a free pass. Business is business, and it's brutal sometimes, but, you know.
Okay, let me, still talking potentials for ICT. There is this argument that it seems the bulk of Nigeria's tech space is concentrated in Lagos. First off, is this true in your opinion? Let me bring this to you, Etuk. Is it true in your opinion that the bulk of Nigeria's tech space is concentrated in Lagos, and delving out to other places seems to be like an adventure other than something that should be a routine if we are to spread the gains, you know, of ICT across the country?
For me, there's almost something you cannot change. Technology drops in Lagos first. The organizations are in Lagos. The money is in Lagos. Then it drifts down. This is the entry. Should it be? No, the Lagos is the entry. You know, I'm new in Lagos. I had to move to Lagos. You know, the knowledge is in Lagos. It moves, it cascades down. So it's something, it shouldn't be, but that is what is. You know.
So how can we decentralize it so every part of Nigeria will be talking about ICT and the potential gains that, so it doesn't seem like you need to get something done. If you don't come to Lagos, nothing gets done.
Last 2 years ago, we had some some incubation centers set up in different places in Nigeria. One was in Calabar, one was in Port Harcourt, you know, but they started having issues of funding, of training, and all that. They all moved back to Lagos. So I think, for me, the government has a part to play. Like you said, give them tax holidays. Don't overtax them. You know, fund them. When they get to a particular point now, you know, like the model of a free zone, like you get a company come in, allow the company to operate for a while, and now the company can bring in a manufacturing company, a manufacturing arm, then you start up. But you know, that tax holiday given to most of these tech companies or tech startups will actually help them breathe.
But some counter argument to say that, well, we should see more of public-private partnerships, because at the end of the day, let's bring it down to state levels where you have a concentration of tech experts to create the hub you need. For example, the state government works with all of these IT experts. We want to ensure that our poles are powered by solar panels and a whole lot more. We have XYZ to fill that in. We want to introduce this automation system within the government. We have that done in place. Ministries and other industries as well to empower them. We have, so that we are directly feeding off the resources we have. Don't you think we should have that sort of partnership?
I do. I think so.
So then what would drive that sort of discourse? Because at the end of the day, we look at big spenders on computer software acquisition and other IT-related services. The Ministry of Power works in-house, and as at last year, March, spent about 5.5 billion naira. You look at the DSS as well, spending about 1.04 billion naira, and National Immigration Service, 600 million naira. That's just looking at that space, that's the area they fall under. So what do you expect? What sort of synergy would you be looking forward to?
Okay, so definitely, I think that the way forward, like you said, is to establish synergies between the local employers, the local communities, okay, in each region or state. I'm trying hard to talk about all this without referring to some information that I'm privy to regarding the last question. So,
yeah,
please So please permit me.
Okay.
So, yes, about 2 years ago, there was a dearth outside Lagos. In fact, it was just outside Lagos. There was practically no other hub or really buzzing hub. But between then and now, I know a few that have come up, and it has come about, which underscores your points. It has come about via a coordinated synergy between the federal government, the office of the vice president. There's this initiative to establish innovation hubs in each of the 6 geopolitical zones, and the private sector. I happen to have worked for one of them in the past, a company, that now has an innovation hub, and they've done well over the last 2 years, in incubating some startup companies. They are not out of the woods yet, so it's critical to highlight the points that Mr. Etuk mentioned earlier. They're not out of the woods yet, but with this synergy between the federal government, like I said, the Office of the Vice President, and these private sector participants in each of the 6 zones, there seems to be some progress. Now, adding to bringing it back to this question, I'm seeing a lot of sense in bringing the local and state governments into this partnership, so that you never know what resources or competencies in terms of, it could be welding, like you said, to put up a solar panel or a solar installation, to power something, or build local inverters, and so on and so forth.
And that way we can also build on research and a whole lot more.
Yeah.
We can't just waste our resources. Meanwhile, we have the potential to grow, definitely. Isn't it, gentlemen?
Thank you, gentlemen. We have to pause here. The conversation on technology continues. In the next segment, we'll be looking at tech and elections. Hopefully, you will stay with us to learn as much as we have learned as well.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Idowu Akinde, is an IT expert, as well as Isaiah Etuk. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and sharing your thoughts. Remember to follow all of our conversation at Plus TV Africa, that's on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can also watch us live at Plus TV Africa, that's on YouTube.